I used to think I was just an extra in my own family. Not because anyone said it out loud, but because of their silence. Every holiday felt like a performance I was never allowed to be part of. All the lights were on my younger sister Madison while I stayed behind the curtain, holding the props. Once, I tried to step forward, and Mom said only one thing. "Don't ruin your sister's moment." I'm Alice, the eldest daughter of a middle-class family in Missouri. Or more accurately, the forgotten one. My parents always claimed they loved us both equally, but anyone who stepped into that house would see the truth was far from that. Madison was the little princess, Mom's favorite nickname, even when she was already 16. That Christmas, she got a brand new iPad, complete with a custom case and a handwritten card from our parents. To the most deserving girl in the world. And me? I got an oversized hoodie, 70% off from Target, in a dull winter gray, still marked final clearance. I was 14 and already knew the difference between love and pity. I didn't dare ask why. Because every time I did, the answers were always the same. "You're older, you should know to give in. You don't need things like that. Mom's really trying, Alice." When I turned 16, my parents threw Madison a huge birthday party. Poolside bash, 2-tiered cake, even a hired DJ. I was assigned to take photos. I spent the whole night behind the camera, watching her toss her hair in the lights, smiling brightly among her friends. And me? No photos, no cake. No one asked if I was having a good time. For my birthday a month later, Mom made a simple dinner at home, saying it was budget-friendly and cozy. A tiny store-bought cake. Just Mom, Dad, and Madison. Madison spent the evening scrolling on her phone. Dad ate, then left early to watch sports. Mom looked at me, smiled, and said, "This is good enough, right, sweetheart?" I nodded because I didn't know how to do anything else but accept the absence, not of money, but of care. When college came, the gap wasn't just a shadow anymore, it was clear as a bank statement. Madison was accepted into a private school in California. My parents paid for everything, tuition, housing, even a school tour trip worth nearly $8,000, 0 cents. Me? I sat at the kitchen table alone, filling out student loan applications. Dad said just one line. "You're going to school nearby, it won't cost much." I worked 3 jobs at once, part-time cashier at a bookstore, barista at a cafe, and teaching assistant, just to afford a cramped room off campus. I'd come home with swollen feet and didn't dare complain. I knew the only thing I'd get from Mom was a cold stare and that same old phrase. "You, demanding things now?" When Madison graduated, my parents rented out a fancy banquet hall, made a tribute video, and spent nearly $20,000, 0 cents, celebrating the family's angel. Me? I got dinner at a local Italian place. Mom handed me a white envelope with a forced smile. "We don't have much, but I think you'll like this." I opened it. A $2, 0 cents lottery ticket. No card. No message. "Maybe it's a winner," Dad chuckled. I laughed too, not because it was funny, but because I was so empty inside. Laughter was the only thing filling the silence. That night, I sat alone in my rented room, dim yellow light casting over the unscratched ticket. I set it on the table like a joke, a symbol of my entire childhood. One shot at luck. Because no one ever thought I deserved more. I didn't scratch it that night. Didn't tuck it in my wallet or pin it to the mirror for hope. I just left it beneath an old book, somewhere between student paperwork and overdue bills. As if not seeing it would help me forget all the times I was made invisible. After graduation, I moved to Springfield, a small city over 3 hours away from home. Far enough to avoid surprise visits, but not far enough for them to say I'd cut ties. I rented a run-down 3rd-floor apartment, no elevator, leaking ceiling, and a gas leak in the kitchen that made cooking feel like a gamble with my life. No one came house hunting with me. No one helped me move. No hugs from Mom, no good luck from Dad. Just a short text from Madison. "Congrats, sis. Don't forget to send pics." I didn't reply. I dropped my single suitcase on the floor, opened the window for air, and told myself, from now on, everything's on me. I worked 2 jobs to survive: daytime communications assistant for a small local ad agency and nighttime server at a dive bar, where the lights were dimmer than the staff and the music drowned out the sighs of tired regulars. Every night I got home around 2 a.m., feet aching, hands smelling like stale beer and sweat. No one knew, no one asked. Each time Madison posted vacation photos from Miami or flaunted her new designer bag, Mom would share the post with a proud caption, "My daughter deserves the best." I blocked her on Facebook. Not out of anger, but exhaustion. I started avoiding every family dinner invite where I'd just sit through long talks about Madison's new investment plans, or amazing job at that cosmetics firm Mom's friend recommended. I faded, like a ghost in my own story. But this time, I didn't feel sad. I was learning to exist, even without anyone beside me. Then one night, after a late shift, I was having drinks with some new friends at a bar near my apartment. Rick, co-worker at the ad agency, frowned as I paid with spare change. "Alice, you really work both jobs?" "Yeah, rent won't pay itself." He sighed, shook his head. "What about your family? They don't help?" I gave a tired smile. "They help Madison. I got a lottery ticket." Rick went quiet, eyes fixed on me. Then Tina, my roommate, jumped in. "You mean, your sister got a scholarship?" I shook my head. "No, my parents paid Madison's tuition, all of it." "And you?" "I have over $40,000 0 cents in student debt." The table went silent, heavy like lead. Someone muttered, "God, that's not favoritism, that's straight-up cruelty." I didn't know how to respond. I just sat there, staring at my warm beer. That sentence pierced me like a knife, not because it was wrong, but because it was so true it stole my breath. I'd been abandoned for so long, I didn't even realize I was still bleeding. I used to think sacrifice was noble, that being the big sister meant giving everything up. But now, hearing someone say, "You deserve better," I saw my childhood for what it really was. A series of forced silences, wrapped in cheap moral lessons. That night, I went home and opened my old drawer. The lottery ticket was still there. A tiny slip of paper with its silver coat untouched. I looked at it like I was looking at myself, left on the sidelines, waiting for a miracle that would never come. I didn't cry. I just sighed. Then I pulled out a blank sheet of paper and wrote 3 lines. "I'm no longer Madison's sister. I'm Alice. And I will succeed." 3 months after the night I wrote those 3 lines of commitment on a blank sheet of paper, life hadn't improved much. I was still walking to work at 6 in the morning, still wearing a grease-stained apron after 7 at night, and still quietly living in a rundown apartment where even rats avoided the collapsed floorboards. But at least, I had stopped making excuses for my family's indifference. It was a Saturday morning. I was cleaning the kitchen after nearly a week of neglect. Beneath a pile of flyers, can lids, and scattered bills was the random junk drawer. A catch-all for everything nameless: broken cables, dead batteries, dried-out pens, a frayed headband, and the lottery ticket. I picked it up. The edges were crumpled, the silver scratch-off coating still intact. The only thing I had received from my parents after graduation. A gift no one believed had value, not even me. I laughed. "To hell with it, let's give it one last try," I muttered. I grabbed my phone and opened the Missouri State Lottery website. On the back of the ticket was the number sequence: 04, -11, -26, -39, -44, 52. I entered each number, my hands trembling not from nerves, but from lack of sleep. Clicked check result. The screen spun for less than 3 seconds. "Congratulations, jackpot winner, $137 million, 0 cents. I stood frozen. No blinking, no breathing. I looked at the screen, then the ticket, then the screen again, over and over like a sleepwalker. I slapped my own cheek lightly, It didn't hurt. My eyes stayed open. It was real. $137 million. A $2 ticket. A just for fun moment. A joke from my family that now broke everything wide open. I vomited into the sink. What followed was a series of bizarre actions. I washed my hands, changed shirts, then slid the ticket into my passport sleeve, placed it under my pillow, and stared at it for 4 hours straight without doing anything else. I didn't call my mom. I didn't tell Madison. I didn't post a thing on social media. I called Google. First search. What to do if you win the lottery in Missouri. Then, how to claim winnings without your family finding out. Then, how to avoid going broke after winning the lottery. Every result said the same things. Keep it secret. Find a financial advisor. Create a legal entity. Don't spend anything right away. Trust no one. I started looking up certified financial advisors in Missouri. The standout name was Carol Bryant, a 56-year-old expert with over 20 years of experience, known for being tighter-lipped than a submarine. Her profile photo showed a silver-haired woman wearing tortoiseshell glasses and a forest green blazer. When I looked into her eyes, I felt something I'd never felt with my mother. Safety. I scheduled a meeting with her for the following Tuesday morning under the name Alice R., inquiring about unexpected inheritance. She smiled as I spoke and just nodded. We'll keep everything under the radar, no worries. That first meeting at Carol's office felt like stepping into another world. Cherrywood furnishings, an automatic espresso machine, carpet so thick you couldn't hear footsteps. I felt like an intruder in a rich person's life, even though, on paper, I'd just become one of them. Carol listened as I told her the whole story. The lottery ticket in the white envelope, the beer I couldn't finish when my friend said, "This is just unfair." She never interrupted. When I finished, she said one sentence. They underestimated the card they misplayed. And then, over the next 3 weeks, Carol helped me set up a limited liability company to claim the winnings. Open 3 separate bank accounts at 3 different banks, none of which held the full amount. Arrange for legal and tax consultation. Build a conservative investment plan. Real estate, government bonds, and blue chip stocks. When I officially received the money, after taxes, nearly $89 million, I walked out of the lottery claims office wearing my old hoodie and faded jeans. No press, no cameras. No one knew my real name. And that felt amazing. That night, I sat on the floor of my crumbling apartment, lit only by a desk lamp with a loose wire, holding a can of soda and whispering, "This is the last time you'll live like this." The lottery ticket, once a joke, was now a weapon, not for revenge, but for liberation. No messages for Madison, no phone calls to my mom. I even blocked my dad's number, the same man who told me at 13. Girls don't need to be smart as long as they marry rich. I bought a safe and placed the original ticket inside. Every time I looked at it, I reminded myself of one thing. I wasn't lucky. I was the lesson they never saw coming. The morning I made the final payment on my student loan, $42,570. My hands trembled even as I pressed one simple button. The moment the screen displayed "paid in full," I exhaled like I'd just set down the entire weight of my childhood. 3 hours later, I went to the diner, where I'd poured sweat, tears, and dignity for the past 2 years, to quit. Linda, the nearly 60-year-old owner with bleached hair and a voice that sounded like it had been sanded by a storm, looked at me suspiciously. "You win the lottery or something?" I smiled faintly. "No, but enough to never put up with this again." I turned in my uniform, handed over my resignation, and tucked a white envelope with $5,000 in cash inside. She opened it, eyes wide. "What the hell is this?" "Because you once covered my shift when I passed out in the kitchen? And because no one else in my life has ever done anything that kind." I walked out the same back door that had once been my only escape route at night, and for the first time, the Springfield sky looked impossibly blue. I bought a black Tesla Model 3. Sleek, discreet, but still a head-turner if I wanted it to be. I didn't. I drove straight to the dealership, paid by bank transfer, said nothing. No selfies with the keys, no Facebook check-ins, no "Look, Mom, I made it." Because she never really looked at me, anyway. I found the house after 3 weeks of circling the western suburbs, about 2 blocks away from Madison's neighborhood. A 2-story modern home, white with gray trim, lavender flowers in the front yard and a small garden out back where tomatoes were starting to grow. Listing price, $1,350,000. I paid $1,400,000, no haggling. No one knew I was the buyer. Everything was under the name of the LLC I had set up under Carol's guidance. Even the realtor only knew me as the CEO of an advertising company based out of state. I didn't throw a housewarming party. Didn't hang a nameplate. The neighbors only knew me as the quiet girl who took evening walks, always had a spotless car, and gave a hand wave of thanks whenever someone let me pass. And I liked it that way. Every morning I made coffee from the automatic machine I once thought was a luxury, and stood by the large glass window, watching the sunlight spill into the living room. The kitchen was no longer a smoke trap. It became the space of fluffy omelets, crispy pastries, and the soft scent of cinnamon. I still worked, but not because I had to, I chose to. I took on a few freelance media projects, crafting campaigns for small businesses on digital platforms. No pressure, no boss, no deadlines tight enough to steal my sleep. Madison texted twice in 3 months. "Are you still living in that old apartment?" I didn't respond. Mom called once in the middle of the night. The number showed up as "press record." I picked up. "Alice, are you okay?" I hung up before she could say another word. I didn't hold a grudge, but I had erased my name from the list of people allowed to be hurt. Once, I drove past Madison's house and saw Mom watering the flowers. My heart pinched. Not because I missed them, but because a small part of me still wished, hopelessly, that they had once paused for a second to think I was worthy of love too. I pulled over, turned off the engine and watched from a distance. Madison stepped out. Soft curls, long white dress and Chanel heels. She and Mom were laughing, unaware of the black Tesla parked 4 houses down. I smiled faintly, then restarted the engine and drove away. The house I bought. Bigger, nicer, quieter, but no one needed to know. It wasn't revenge, it was rebirth. I lived in intentional silence. No one invited me to family meetings. No one asked, "How's Alice doing lately?" But when I walked into the bathroom each morning and looked in the mirror, I no longer avoided my own gaze. One day Carol called. "Feel like traveling? I know someone in Italy." I laughed. I'm already on the biggest trip of my life, living a life that's finally mine. Perfect. Just remember, don't let the past knock while you're sipping wine. I still kept the lottery ticket in the safe. Not because of the money, but because it was the only proof I'd ever had of something no one else had acknowledged. I wasn't an accident of fate. I was the one who rewrote the game they thought was set in stone. I shouldn't have stopped at that cafe. One sunny Sunday afternoon, I drove out of the neighborhood looking for a quiet place to work. Hoodie pulled up, sunglasses on, no makeup. I looked like any other office girl chasing peace in a noisy city. I parked on a corner, the sleek black Tesla standing out among old sedans. The moment I stepped out, I heard a voice. "Alice." I turned. It was Ben Harris, a high school classmate. He used to lend me pens in math class and almost asked me to prom if Madison hadn't stepped in first. Ben looked at me, then at the car. His mouth opened and closed like he was trying to process data his brain couldn't compute fast enough. "Wow, long time no see. Your sister said you were still working at the diner?" I nodded slightly, offered a polite smile. I took a different turn lately. Ben glanced at the car again. His eyes betrayed his curiosity. I could tell he was mentally calculating its market value, not because he cared, because he'd be telling someone else. 3 hours later, I got my first message. From Madison. Still driving that old car? Someone said you were seen in a Tesla? I didn't reply. An hour later, Mom called. Missed calls. Mom. 3 times. I turned off my phone. The next day I turned it back on. A flood of messages poured in like a summer storm. Alice, honey, we'd love to see you. It's been so long since we had dinner together. Sweetheart, did you move without telling us? Is that Tesla really yours? Madison said someone saw you on the west side of Springfield. Your dad and I are worried about you, you know that. Can we meet? No one ever cared what I was eating. No one asked how much debt I was in. But now they cared. Not because I was doing well, but because I had escaped their grip, without asking permission. I turned off all notifications, but they didn't stop. 3 days later, I received a text from an unknown number. Hey sis, Mom's blood pressure dropped yesterday. Don't stay silent anymore. I checked the number, Madison. Attached was a photo of Mom lying on the sofa, hand to her forehead, like a scene out of a low-budget soap opera. No IV, no doctor, but one thing stood out. On the coffee table behind her, a stack of cream-colored paper that read, Plans for the future. I knew exactly what she was doing. They were meeting, plotting, redrawing the family map. With me at the center this time. Not out of love, but out of financial interest. I scrolled back to the oldest text from Mom, dated a year and a half ago. It read, Madison needs to pay tuition, urgently, can you help? I had sent the money. They never texted back to say thank you. I gave a cold laugh, not because I was sad, but because I was done. That night, I sat on the balcony, the city lights glowing through the glass, a glass of white wine in hand. My phone buzzed again and again. I set it face down on the table, letting it vibrate like ants crawling over a dead thing. I didn't need another word to know what was happening. My family had smelled the money. And now they were coming dressed as concerned, waving the blood ties banner, hoping I'd return to my old role, the bill payer, the burden bearer, the invisible one. But I wasn't there anymore. 3 days later, I received a dinner invitation from Madison's house. Ivory envelope. Familiar slanted handwriting. Mom's. Sunday, 7 p.m. The family misses you. I placed the letter on the gas stove, lit a flame and watched it burn slowly, like a farewell ritual. No one in that house had ever asked me, are you okay? Now they were asking, what do you have? I didn't owe them an explanation, but they owed me an entire childhood. I went to that dinner for one reason only. I wanted to hear them lie to my face. Madison's house was in the new neighborhood on the south side of Springfield. The kind of place for people who cared more about appearances than reality. The freshly polished oak door, the gold-plated nameplate etched with the Rowans, made it look like they'd just won a statewide Model Family Award. I parked far down the street and walked in like a stranger, holding a bottle of red wine. Just expensive enough to not be rude, but not classy enough to be mistaken for an apology. Mom opened the door with a smile, as if she hadn't ignored me for the past year. Alice, look at you. You're beautiful. Come in, sweetheart. I nodded. No hug. No one hugs the person they've erased from memory. The living room smelled of pine and the fake sweetness of cheap scented candles. My dad was watching the news, and Madison appeared from the kitchen in a tight dress and earrings bigger than the reason she'd invited me back. You made it. I was just telling everyone how you've been living nearby and keeping it a secret. So mysterious. I smiled faintly. No one ever asked. We sat at the table. The main course was grilled meat, the dish my dad once banned me from eating because it's not ladylike. But tonight he offered it to me first like it was some kind of divine revelation. Dinner passed with hollow conversation. Madison's getting married. They just installed a new oven. Mom's thinking about planting lavender. Dad's considering early retirement if the investments go well. No one mentioned the real reason I was there. Until Madison tapped her wine glass and smiled like a pageant queen on coronation night. Actually, Mom and I have an idea we wanted to share. Mom folded her hands and nodded like she was hosting a shareholders meeting. You know, Madison's wedding is going to be very special. We're planning it in Charleston, right on the beach, with over 100 guests. It'll be amazing. Madison chimed in. And we also want to expand the house, a guest room, a small yoga studio, and a nursery for the future. Dad added with a light cough. Everyone was thinking, if you could help a little financially, it would mean a lot. I sat there, set my knife down on the plate, and dabbed my mouth with a napkin, as if I were auditioning and this was the final scene I needed to get through. How much exactly? I asked, voice neutral, like discussing the cost of printing flyers. Mom glanced at Madison, then back at me. About $120,000, sweetheart, for the house and the wedding? If you could just cover that part, we'll handle the rest. I gave a slight nod. Well, think about it. The entire table seemed to exhale. Madison beamed and placed her hand on mine. I knew you'd understand. We're family. I pulled my hand away. Right. Family. I stood, poured another glass of wine, then turned back to the table, looking at each of them. No one spoke. No one even breathed too hard. And I began. What is family, Mom, when Madison gets a pool party for her birthday and I get a grocery store cake? When she goes to college with everything paid and I sign student loans alone? Dad grimaced. That's old stuff, Alice. Don't dig it up. I didn't look at him. What about the lottery ticket? Not a joke, Mom. A real $2 ticket. While she got a $40,000 graduation party and a new car. Madison's cheeks flushed. You're being dramatic. I laughed. No, I'm just getting started. I stood, pushed my chair in, and looked straight into Mom's eyes. The woman who once taught me that a woman should know her place. I'm not an ATM, not a backup plan, and I'm definitely not the shadow everyone calls only when they need something. I pulled out my wallet, unfolded a piece of paper, and placed it on the table. Here's a reminder. I don't owe anyone at this table anything. Mom picked it up and opened it. It was a photocopy of my first-year tuition bill, stamped in bold red letters. Paid in full. I did that. On my own. No one here helped. And I don't need another hand reaching out. I need someone who stands with me. But clearly I won't find that here. I turned to leave. Madison called after me. You're the most selfish person I've ever met. I looked back and smiled. And you're the one who lives off other people's kindness without a hint of shame. The door clicked shut behind me with a metallic finality, as cold and certain as the decision I had just made. Driving home, I didn't play music. Didn't check my phone. I just listened to the sound of the tires on the road. The sound of freedom. This time, I didn't say, I'll think about it. I had already decided. That night, as soon as I got home, I placed my phone on the kitchen counter, opened my contacts, and blocked every familiar name. Mom, Dad, Madison. I didn't cry, I didn't hesitate. Only one phrase echoed clearly in my mind. Enough. I removed myself from the family group chat on Facebook, deleted old photo albums from Google Drive, wiped away every trace of the Alice who once lived for praise from people who had never truly seen her. Inside the small safe, where I once kept the lottery ticket, I replaced it with a new handwritten note in black ink. Freedom is not something you're given, it's something you take. The next day, I sent one final email to Carol. I want to expand my investment portfolio, prioritize sustainable real estate and green stocks. I don't want to be richer, I want to be stronger. She replied that same day. I'll build it like a fortress. I transferred a portion of my funds into long-term investments, real estate in Oregon, a small stake in a regenerative farming company in Colorado, and an education grant for girls in communities of color, signed under the name AR Foundation, with no need for anyone to know who was behind it. I booked a trip to Italy, not to show off, but because I wanted to feel something not tied to debt or duty. I sat on the patio of a cafe in Florence, eating gelato while the wind blew off the Arno River, and I found myself smiling. Not for anyone, not for anything, just because I was breathing. Then, I went to New Orleans and danced at a jazz festival in the rain. No one recognized me. No one asked where I was from. A middle-aged man invited me to dance. I nodded. We spun through the soaked crowd, the music pounding as wildly as my heart beating for the first time in years. I didn't splurge. Didn't buy a mansion. Didn't throw money at designer handbags or sports cars. I lived just enough. A warm home, a personal library with wooden floors and soft yellow lights, a kitchen I actually loved cooking in, and a porch wide enough to write on during autumn afternoons. Each morning I woke up without hearing Mom's nagging, no texts from Madison asking for a quick loan, no one telling me I needed to be more understanding. I brewed coffee, played soft jazz, and began the day my own way. Sometimes I still got texts from unknown numbers. Are you doing okay? I'm sorry if I ever made you feel hurt. Madison's about to have her baby. Would you want to visit? I didn't read them all. I didn't block them either. I left them in the spam folder, as a reminder that I no longer lived to comfort others with my silence. I no longer resented, no longer needed recognition, no longer craved a sorry or a you matter too. I gave value to myself, like a medal that needs no audience. Each week, I wrote one journal line. One week it was, I said no to a party they only invited me to because I could afford it. Another. Today, I finished planting my first row of vegetables. The smell of soil made me feel more real than I've ever felt. I enrolled in an art class, joined a small book club at the local library. A woman named Clara, 65 years old, invited me to dinner after one of the meetings. She talked about her ex-husband, about years of being pushed aside in her own family. I didn't say much, but when I got home, I wrote in my notebook, I'm not alone. I'm just refining my world. One spring evening, with a breeze whispering over the porch, I sat alone with my newly learned ukulele. I strummed a few simple chords, then hummed an old tune I once heard in Dad's car. I didn't smile either. I just lived, on my terms and no one else's. I didn't expect to run into Jason at the downtown cafe. It was a Friday afternoon, crisp and blue-skied. The kind of weather that made people want to sit outdoors with something warm in their hands. I had just pulled my laptop from my bag when a familiar, sarcastic voice came from behind me. Alice, is that really you? You look different. I turned around. Jason stood there, light blue shirt, sleeves rolled up, hair neatly styled, polished leather shoes that looked straight out of a brand shoot. But his eyes no longer held that smug confidence. Instead, there was something else. Irritation, laced with doubt. I smiled, raised my cappuccino calmly, like we were strangers reunited after a silent retreat. Hello, Jason, long time. He sat across from me without asking, without invitation. That same familiar boldness, the habit of stepping into people's lives like it was his right. I heard you're living on the west side now, driving a Tesla? Someone even said you bought a house near us. I nodded. I didn't confirm or deny. I took a sip of coffee and placed the cup down as a minimum courtesy. You've gone really quiet, Jason continued, like you dropped off the family radar. I smiled softly, rested my hand on the table. I didn't disappear. I just stopped knocking on doors that were never going to open for me. Jason raised an eyebrow, offered a strained smile. Blunt as ever. So, what are you doing now? Or, are you just living off your lottery win? I looked him in the eye. It wasn't curiosity. It was a jab. A crooked hook wrapped in polite phrasing. Maybe I did win the lottery, I said slowly, clearly. But everything after that, every cent, every step, I built myself. Jason leaned back, exhaled. Still feels unfair. You got lucky. Meanwhile, I'm juggling wedding debt, house repairs, and Amanda wanting to quit her job to launch a brand. You had parents, I interrupted. You had your own graduation party, a brand new car at 16, your tuition paid, a house in your name right out of college, a fully funded wedding, and I had a cheap lottery ticket. Jason blushed, his voice breaking. But I have to keep it all going. You just had to scratch a ticket and became a millionaire. That's way too easy. I lowered my head, pressed my lips together, then looked at him one last time, as if gazing at a portrait whose lines had already faded. You're right, I scratched a ticket and got money, but you've spent your life scratching others down, and still ended up with nothing truly your own. He didn't respond. He just sat there, eyes no longer searching for an answer. Just the vacant look of someone who finally realized he's sinking, and no one's coming to pull him out. I stood, picked up my handbag. Jason, I don't need your approval. I don't need anyone in the family to look at me and nod saying she really tried. I just need to live a life where, when I close my eyes, I know I'm no longer being controlled by anyone. I turned and walked slowly toward the glass doors. He called after me, his voice quieter but still carrying the sulky tone of a child who just lost his toy. Alice, you don't have to act like this. I stopped, tilted my head. I'm not acting. I'm living, for real. Unlike many others. That evening, I returned home, opened the wide window, and looked into the distance, where city lights met the fading dusk like a soft painting. I brewed a hot espresso and stepped out onto the balcony. The breeze flowed gently through the curtains, mixing the scent of coffee with the woody smell of the custom teak table I had made. I sat in the armchair, legs crossed, hand wrapped around a dark ceramic cup. In that moment, I knew I wasn't angry anymore. Not at Jason. Not at Mom. Not at the past. I no longer lived for the longing to be heard. I no longer needed a fake reunion. I didn't need Jason to understand. I didn't need Mom to apologize. I needed one thing only, to be myself, without being controlled, without having to prove anything, without being someone else's backdrop. The sun sank slowly below the horizon. I closed my eyes. The warmth from the coffee cup spread through my fingers, and I smiled. Alice's story is a powerful reminder that no one needs a family's permission to be worthy. We may not be born into fairness, but we can choose how we live after that. When Alice let go of her need to be acknowledged by those who had always dismissed her, she found the most precious thing of all, freedom and peace within herself. Sometimes, the only thing we need to do isn't to seek love from others, but to learn how to love ourselves first. What do you think about Alice's journey? Was she too harsh? Or was this the only way to truly live? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to follow the channel for more emotional stories about family life.